Filling in today for Arrow, for our friends Dell and Randy from Arrow Gates. They are working on a very important government project. And Chris has agreed to share his experience with some pretty serious security issues his facility has experienced. So he is our expert security board member. So with that, I will send it over to you, Chris.
Thank you. It's a bit of an extreme, but I'll take it for now. I understand Brian had an incident that he's going to be chiming in as he sees fit. Again, my name is Chris Holloway. I know the little thing says Shelly Harris. For some reason, this is Zoom app. I'm Shelly. I have 15 years experience. I've been on board for about 4 years. I'm currently the treasurer, although I don't really know what that means right now. I've bought, I've sold, I've built storage, and I've operated it. And I wanted to touch on something that the guy before me said about owners not knowing how to run their businesses. If you bought a plane and don't know how to fly it, you're gonna crash. So I would suggest you should know your day-to-day operations with or without a manual. That being said, Arrow Gates couldn't make it. They have a secret government project they're working on. I don't have a sexy slideshow to give you, but I do have a ton of experience, a lot of mistakes that I've made over the last 15 years. And I just thought I would share some of those mistakes or observations that I've made. Obviously, the first thing as far as having a secure facility is you don't want to be the target. So like a bully at school picks on what they perceive as the weakest person. You don't want to be perceived as that. So obvious ways of making that initial perception is having a fence around your facility. Those are great. They give a good perception of security, but the cons of it is they're easy to get through. I mean, if you've ever tried to get through a chain link fence or have experienced someone going through your chain link fence, you'll find that it's more of a facade than it is anything else. It's keeps the honest people out, so to speak. Also, they're expensive, and the maintenance for keeping the weeds and stuff away, or I'm actually working on that right now at one of my facilities. And so one of the tricks that we try to do when we build to minimize the amount of fencing is using your buildings as your fence. And then you only have certain areas where you have to put in some chain link fence. The negative side of that, and this actually has happened to me, you will have crafty people who will just simply unscrew the panels and slip in. My facilities now, they're all climate controlled, so that you couldn't do that as easily today as you could, say, at my Springfield facility where it was non-climate controlled and all there was, one sheet of metal between you and the world. They'll just unscrew it and they'll slip right in from the bottom. And then, as I've experienced, not at my facility, but I've heard from others, they'll slip into one unit and start cutting out holes and working laterally through your facility. As a part of your walkthrough, which you should be doing anyway, and I'll be getting to that, check the outsides of your building, because this was after we had locked a person out. He decided that he was getting in that unit, and that's how he did it. The other obvious ones would be a gate. This is the shameless plug for Arrow Gates. They've retrofitted 2 of my gates and put in 1 new gate for me, and they do a fantastic job. I don't even know if there's another place in Missouri because I've never looked for them, but Arrow Gates is legit. And one of the things that they do with our gate, and I'm sure a lot of you experience this, with the StoreLogic software, we keep track of everybody that's coming and going. We know who's been there, how long they've been there, what time they came, obviously. And we also program the gates so that the gates open between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Or excuse me, it's closed between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Because our experience is nothing good typically happens after 10 p.m. at a storage facility, with obvious exceptions of businesses and whatnot. We have one client in particular who does a party service. And so most of her time at the facility is after 10 p.m. because she's putting her stuff away after attending a party, which obviously right now is a non-issue. Let's see, but gates are expensive, but they do give that perception of security. And I know like someone like Stan would come on immediately and say, don't use the word security. People have gotten sued over using that word. I'm using it for the sake of having this conversation, but I would not use that word when speaking to a customer based off lawsuits I've heard of in the past. Obviously post your gate hours and articulate them during the move-in process, because we have found that it deters would-be bad guys when they find out that that we do have gate hours. And you also can kind of get a red flag when they start to insist on having after hours when they don't have like a business or something for a legit reason to do it. Excuse me. Okay, moving on to cameras. And also, I only have about 15 minutes, so if you guys have questions, I'll hit them right at the end, but I'm gonna blaze through this as fast as I can but get the material across. The pros and cons of cameras is, one, obviously they give that perception of security again. So when people see it, and I put a lot of them around the gate to be as scary as possible. But here, the problem with them, if you speak with any police officer who has dealt with these scenarios, they'll tell you that the cameras pretty much tell you what you already know. Somebody broke in and they took stuff. Now we're getting higher grade cameras to where there's more pixels to work with. However, you don't have a camera over every unit. We do try to put our cameras in choke points so that you do have to go through one of our cameras at least. Most of the time it's about 3 by the time they get to the unit. But if you have somebody who, cuts through the roof of the building to get to the unit, which has happened, or cuts through the fence on a blind spot or whatnot, if they've cased your place, those cameras aren't going to do you much good. Also, make sure that you're keeping your DVR in a secure location, because if they're smart, they're going to break into your facility, do all the cherry picking, and then go into the office and steal the DVR on their way out. So consider that when you're installing your system. Let's see. As far as the police goes on this, and this is not negative towards police, this is actually positive because I've had both experiences. I have my facility in Jefferson City. I have cops that actually rent from me there because I'm the only facility in Jefferson City that they have not had to do a police report regarding theft on. The only theft that we did have was an ex-wife and a husband, and they got in a fight and whatever. And we don't really count that one because she had the code and the key to get in. But the police, you can't really depend on them in terms of like being secure because they have bigger problems than you to deal with. We do have a relationship with the PD here in town to where they do drive-bys, but you can't depend on that. We are lucky at one of our facilities on the west side of town. It happens to be right across the street from a police speed trap. So there's like always a cop sitting there. That's kind of nice. So those are the conventional ones. I want to get into non-conventional real quick because I only have a few more minutes left. Where we really feel like we thrive in the security side of things is on the psychological side, when the manager is dealing with the customer initially. First of all, we try to keep our rates as high as we can, and we don't use the word free. Free attracts the wrong people, and cheap rates attract the wrong people. And it's like, yeah, you build up slower, but we make like 6 calls a month for trying to collect rent, and I almost never have a security issue. And that's because we do daily walkthroughs, and we walk the entire facility. And when you've done it every day, those of you who do it know this, you notice when a speck of dust is moved. And when you're on that level of understanding your facility and something doesn't smell right, probably because somebody's smoking in the unit next to you, you know that, and you can react to it early while the dragon is little, and you can deal with it. Whereas if you have, every problem I've had has been, the root of the problem has been that the manager was not doing their daily walkthroughs. Every single time I've had a security problem, it was because they were not doing their walkthroughs. So I can't stress that enough. Every day, go out there with a clipboard, check all the units, look at the locks. You'll get used to what the locks look like. So when something changes, because we had a guy who was cherry picking people, he would pop their lock, go in there, take what he wants, and then put another lock on it. So when you're doing your walkthrough, all you see is a lock on a unit, no big deal. So it got to the point where we were having to track what locks were on each unit so that we could find this guy. And ultimately we did. The FBI had to get involved. It's a long story. But I would suggest doing your daily walkthroughs, catching the dragons when they're early. Don't use the word free. I don't care what your marketing guy says. You're going to get the wrong people. And I think that touches up a lot of it. Are there any questions on this before I sign off or hand over to Brian? I think I go.
I don't see any questions that have come up yet, but I will send them over to you in case they do. That was good information. Brian, you want to add anything on that?
The only thing really I can add is Chris has a good point. The more involved you are, the more your managers are seen, the more you're seen on the property, less chance of anything happening. And I've had a customer in our Denver location that broke into the facility, but he was a customer. What he did, he rented a climate controlled unit. He would go in at night and take off the top 2 panels and just climb unit to unit and then put stuff back in his unit. Then he'd come once a week, rent a moving truck and just move all the stuff out. They only caught him because he was moving out underneath a camera. And everything that was reported stolen, you could see in the back of the truck. So he was not the brightest guy to start with. But guys, the more you're involved, the more you're seen, the more you're on property. I mean, that just deters the theft out there, gives more of a sense and makes people feel a little bit better if they always see you and what you're doing. And I agree with Chris. Our gates are closed from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Even when someone applies for it, they have to go through an approval process. The manager submits it. We look at it. We check it out to make sure it's a legit business. And then one of our supervisors will call them to make sure they have to have it. And most of the time, well, it's just a little more convenient in case I want to get in there late. They don't really want it. And we charge just like $5 for it. But it lets us know who's in and out of there in case there is a nighttime theft. And I know we don't have a lot of time today, guys. So when you get done, you're more than welcome to give me a call offline, and we can walk through anything you want to walk through, whether it's the COVID stuff going on, anything property you have going on in your facility, you need some recommendations, people to fix stuff. You're more than welcome to call me anytime. I'm sure any of the board would be happy to do that for you also.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, we had one question come in. Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I saw a few. The first question, I saw the motion lights question. My facilities, well, my newer facility has all LED external lights, but all the facilities have photo cells. So when it gets dark enough, all the lights are on all the time. It's worth paying for it because again, I want to be scary to the bad guys. If it's lit up at night, they don't want to come. I don't want them showing up and finding out the lights turn on when they get there. I don't want them showing up at all. Right. Also, how did I handle the screw removal break-in? All you can really do is repair it. I bought some game cameras. It was one of the ways I ended up catching this guy. And even though I had my regular cameras, I also had hidden game cameras so that I could get the information I needed to get the arrest on that. And then I had one about locks. I'm only saying this because these are what I use. I'm not getting paid by them and I'm not plugging them, but we sell Chateau disc locks to our customers. We prefer people use disc locks. Obviously they do have a weakness, but you know, if somebody really wants in your unit, they're gonna get in your unit. We try to be as much of a turn as possible. And advice on people prying. Oh gosh, yeah, this one is terrible. When they can't, this is the downside of disc locks, is people will bring a crowbar and they will rip open the door. So you have to replace the door. And that's really frustrating. As far as what to do about it, again, just trying to make it to where people don't want to be there. Watch out specifically for girlfriends who are renting a unit and they're paying for it, but their boyfriend is the one using the unit. That is a huge red flag. And that was what ultimately was one of my problems was we didn't even know this guy's name because she was renting the unit and him coming and going wasn't as noticeable. because of the time of day, blah, blah, blah. But if you want more information on this, I realize I'm way over time. Please feel free to hit me up. My information is on the website. I'll be glad to speak with anyone. Thank you.
Yeah. All of our board members' information is under the leadership tab at mssoa.org. We're going to take a little bit of a break. Hopefully, everybody's going to come back and join us for Stan. He's going to give us a little bit of legal information about what we need to know about in the COVID-19 era, and also discuss the new MSSOA model rental agreement. Anyway, little break. We will be back in at 11:30, I believe. Yes, 11:30 with Stan Masters.